So let me just tell you that the episode you're about to listen to is not what I was planning on doing. I was planning on having this wonderful soul of a human being on to discuss sales copy and, general marketing copywriting things. But she was just giving me so many things I got curious about that I just couldn't help myself by asking questions. We're talking about things that I think are even better and more profound around motherhood and failure and the relationship between your story as a mother and then the story of your child entering and death and rebirth and all of the things. It is one of the most beautiful conversations I've had on the Flourishing Entrepreneur podcast, and I cannot wait for you to hear it, especially hearing it coming from a fellow storyteller named Jillian Anderson. Jillian Anderson is a copywriter and a copy consultant for motherhood-inspired brands. She's worked with over 250 clients from across 55 countries, and now she specializes in high-performance sales copy, the kind that sounds like you and sells way better. She lives in the southern U.S. with her husband, children, and a non-compliant flock of chickens. This is an amazing episode, especially if you're a mom, you are the partner of someone who's about to give birth to a child, and understanding how life shifts and grows and develops. I'm passionate about understanding this because it helps me understand the stage of life that I'm in as a mother of a 19-month-old beautiful baby girl, Ruby Coral. And this episode, I think, gets into some of the heart of the things that you don't see on Instagram, and you're not going to hear these types of conversations happening very widely out there. So get ready, feel the heartwarmingness coming, and feel the feeling seen coming, because that's what is happening in this episode. All right, let's go.
Welcome to the Flourishing Entrepreneur podcast with Alea Harris. If you're looking for actionable ways to overcome communication and differentiation challenges by sharing radically authentic stories, you are in the right place. Listen in and learn how to stand in the power of your unique narrative to transform your personal life, business, and workplace culture. And now, your host, award-winning international speaker, strategic storytelling consultant, and Japanese whiskey lover, Ruby Coral's mom, Alea Harris.
Jillian, thank you so much for joining me here on the Flourishing Entrepreneur podcast today. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Alea. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So I've already talked a little bit about who you are and what you do, but it's different coming straight from the person. So in just a couple of sentences before we get into our hard-hitting questions, can you tell the people who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Jillian Anderson. I'm a copywriter and copy consultant for motherhood-inspired brands, and I focus on high-performance sales copy that sounds like you and sells way better.
Why motherhood brands?
Great question. I focus on the motherhood brands probably because I have a deep understanding of the ideal client for a lot of these businesses and brands. I really connect with moms. I connect with moms in the holistic health space a lot. And so I just enjoy that work. I enjoy those offers. I enjoy the heart and the mission behind a lot of those businesses, improving maternal health care for women, improving mental health care for new moms, improving postpartum care for new moms. I'm very passionate about those things. And so it felt very natural to bridge my work in copywriting with those interests and passions.
I'm so glad that you're doing that. As someone who had very deep postpartum depression for 10, 11 months, I love anytime I come across anyone and anything that is helping moms navigate any part of motherhood. There are I don't know, and I've said this before, who the PR person for motherhood is, but they are doing an amazing job, because before you have kids, it's just all like pink nurseries with clouds and like cool little ribbons and stuff. And you're like, oh, and I'm a mom and I get Mother's Day cards and hand little drawings and mugs. And almost none of that is what it really feels like to be a mom. And especially when I'm a first time mom, and especially as you're entering into motherhood, I have realized how little of that there is and how much more realness there is in motherhood. So I'm so excited that you're helping to have those brands communicate the assistance and the help and the just resonance even more, because I think they really need it, because they need to shop from the rooftops, and moms need to know that those opportunities are available for them.
Yeah, they need help. They need to be able to understand where to get help. They need to be able to have those hard conversations. I totally agree, 100%.
So you are a copywriter, check. How does telling the story for a motherhood brand differ from telling a story for any other brand?
Great question. I think that I'm always working backwards from the emotional connection that the website or the offer has with the reader. And so it has to do with that story that's going to evoke that emotion of basically change and transformation. The change and the transformation that the reader wants, which if this is a mother who's looking for, maybe she's looking to be less of an angry mom, let's just say, maybe, and I'm saying angry mom, but like maybe she's looking to enjoy motherhood more. Maybe she's
You mean being less than like a mom? Because I feel like angry is always in parentheses at the front. Sometimes it's just silent and we just don't say it out loud. But I feel like it's often just like omnipresent, ready to be activated when needed.
I wish more people would talk about it. I mean, I, with my first, had a lot of anger come up, and I really think it was a rocky transition into motherhood. I didn't have a good mother figure. I had a lot of dysfunction in my home growing up. And so basically motherhood was like, all right, let's have a hard time. And so, with the storytelling, I really try to connect the reader emotionally to an aspirational goal or an aspirational phase of her life. What does she want to step into? What does she want to feel? What does she want to let go of? And what stories best communicate that transformation that she's seeking?
I think so often we don't really underscore the transformational part of motherhood. Like, obviously you're transforming from like not a mother to a mother, or a mother of one to a mother of two, which I have heard is a crazy ride in and of itself. You have, how many kids do you have?
2.
Yeah, you are more of a woman than I am. I already know.
No, I'm going to say no.
I only have one. And I'm just like, I cannot even girlfriend, even fathom.
I need to say. Yeah. No, 2 is easier than 1. I'm serious. 2 is easier than 1. At 2.
Really? You are the only person I've ever heard say that.
I'm telling you, once there's another one, they become a little clan, and all of a sudden you're in a different like class in the house. You're a different level, and they just like take care of each other. I swear, they become a clan. It is easier. 2 easier than 1.
2 is okay. All right. My husband would love to hear you say that, because he's like, let's have 7. And I'm like, righty then. But I love, again, how you're talking about the transformation and the different transformations through becoming a mother and then throughout the stages of motherhood. What was one of the pivotal moments in your life when you were like, oh, wow, this is different. Oh, wow, I have transformed. Oh, wow. Like, I am now a mom, and now I have this in-depth understanding of what this means, or something else that you didn't have before. And it was like kind of a more guttural felt experience versus what you could read on the interwebs.
Yeah, that guttural felt experience for me was certainly right immediately after my son's birth. And we had 2 unassisted childbirths planned. And so it was just my husband and I there in the lake house cabin. We had a tiny little blue bathtub, the ugliest, tiniest little bathroom. My son was born in that bathtub, and he basically came out screaming with his eyes wide open. And in that moment, I was like highly aware that birth is death, and this is the same thing. Literally, he's born birth is death. Like it was obviously, this is like kind of a concept that's a little tough to put words to, but it was just this.
It's tough to describe, but I'm right there with
you. Yeah. It's like, oh, wow, this is a cycle of life, birth and death, and I'm going to die one day. And I just looked at him and was like, my life is going to be over. Your life is just starting. And in that moment, I knew I needed to become a writer, and that I was a writer, but that I needed to write publicly. And so I basically became very passionate about writing online. And that was 2013. And I just ran with it. It was publishing one blog at a time. I'm just going to put this out there. I'm going to hit publish. So that was my, guttural felt, moment there.
Well, let's break this down a little bit, because I feel like I missed something in the gap, because you had, this is how your son was born, and then the concept of birth and death. How did you connect that to becoming a writer? Was it that you wanted to leave a legacy because you knew that you were going to be dying soon? What was that connection?
Yeah, the connection was that I don't want to die and not have done what's inside of me, or have published what I have to say, or expressed. I think self-expression really, like, there is this drive to express myself, to write, to put words to concepts. And if I don't act on this on my deathbed, I will regret it. I will look back and think, you didn't use what juice you had. Why didn't you do it? Why didn't you do anything about it?
Oh, I think that that's amazing and so beautiful. On your birthbed, thinking about your deathbed, and your birthbed inspiring your passions to make sure that when you're on your deathbed, you have lived your life to the fullest. What an amazing way to articulate a birth story. It's interesting. I have a very, very, very dear friend of mine whose parent is in the process of transitioning on the other end, like you were talking about, and soon the parent will be on their deathbed, and she has a death doula, or it's a hospice person, who was describing and is preparing the family, and described dying like going into labor. And I'm like, really? And I had never thought about it before, how when we are in labor, I don't know about you, but I was like, there was several times where I just wanted to like press pause. I was like, can I just like catch my breath? Like, I just need a second. Like, I wanted to like talk to the manager of labor and be like, hey, I need to talk to your boss, because like, I just need, like, can you just give me a beat? Like 5 minutes, catch my breath, want to walk around, maybe knock back a shot of whiskey, and like pause, and then we can get back into it. But as you know, there is no manager of labor, and there's no pause button. And I apparently, according to the information that my friend was telling me, death feels very similar. Once it gets rolling, it's just rolling. Once the transition is starting, the transition is just in place, and you have control about how you go through the transition, but not if you're going through the transition, right? Your son, at a certain point in time, your son was coming. You could cross your legs, you could clench your booty cheeks together. Your son was coming, right? And we often, I feel like, don't notice the transitions that we make in life as being something that's out of our control. Most of the transitions are in our control. So if you're thinking about the transition that your son gave you, and the experience and the beautiful transition that it allowed you to make in your own life to finding your passion, you're now in control of that. But what are some of the lessons that you maybe learned from your labor experience or from your birthing experience when you were out of control that you can apply, and you do apply now in your life and in your work, when your transition and your constant involvement, you're more in control of?
What a great question. I mean, control is such an interesting topic. I have struggled with control more in the past. I think that becoming a mom has softened me a little bit to the ebbs and flows and being comfortable with being out of control. I would say I'm a 9 out of 10 comfortable out of control now, whereas previously and prior to motherhood, I was probably a 3 out of 10 comfortable with being out of control. So I am very much a spontaneous, in the moment flow kind of a person. I really struggle with planning, because I feel like, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but I feel like planning, for instance, things in business, launches, experiences, it's hard for me to feel like all the factors are going to line up. I would almost rather be riding the ebbs and flows of all the change naturally than feeling like, oh, I had a plan. I had control of the plan. Now it's all out of control. It's out of my hands. But just like everybody else, it's tough to be out of control. We recently moved. I felt like everything was out of control. Where is my office? What am I doing? Where's the rhythms and routines? Everyone is out of control in my house. I cannot regain control.
That's that 1 out of 10, that little bit, that 1 out of 10 that you were talking about, right? I'm very interested in this concept, though. I'm going to ask another related question, because you're more comfortable with the ebbs and flows, but how does that relate to how you perceive success and failure? Because this is my thinking, and I'm putting words totally in your mouth, and you have every right to disagree with me. But my thought is, because this is also not me, you're 9 out of 10 comfortable with being out of control. I'm like the opposite. I'm a Virgo sun sign. I'm like, no, but if we made a checklist about it, everything would be better. That's me. So this is like, I'm exploring your world and trying to put words to so that I can have a different perspective, which is probably also like healthier one for me as well. So you're ebbing and flowing, so then out of control is fine. But then where do you attribute your success to or your failure to? Do you attribute to the things that you did? Do you attribute just to things that are lining up or misaligning? How do you take that accountability or responsibility for the things that are happening or not? Like, what does that picture look like? Paint that for me. I feel like I'm looking at you through a microscope. I'm like, this is such a different way of thinking, and I'm fascinated.
Well, maybe it's my structure and discipline side that allows me to feel comfortable out of control. Because I do now, while I'm not like checklist, I'm very time block. I have a lot of time blocks. I have a general flow of what happens at this time block, and then I flow to the next time block. And so no matter what, I'm showing up and hitting Monday through Friday with my best, giving it my best. So I think I'm kind to myself because I have that, but it's not rigid in terms of all the things need to happen or all the things need to happen at the precise time. But in terms of failure, I really think that there is a quote I like, and Myron Golden said this. He said, "If it's not working for me, it's working on me." And it took me years of entrepreneurship and failures, for instance, with launches, right? A launch where I thought, all right, this launch is certainly going to do $20,000. I'm going to go and hire a new team member. I'm going to, do this, that, and put all these pieces in place. And then your launch does nowhere near what you thought, right? There were moments like that where I wish I had heard that quote, right? If it's not working for you, it's working on you. And you can look back and say, I'm seasoned. I have thick skin. I can handle it. I'm enjoying it more. I'm enjoying entrepreneurship more, having failure under my belt, quite a lot of failure. I'm enjoying the whole thing more,
I'm with you. I have quite a lot of failure under my belt as well, including failed launches. And it's almost like, I can't think of another metaphor. So we're just going to say the one that's popping in my mind is like popping your cherry. And then after that, it's like, oh, well, I've done that and I'm still here. So if I do it again, like I wouldn't enjoy it necessarily, but it'll be fine. And then you start kind of rolling with it. Like that was at least my experience of failing miserably is like, well, I'd also come back pretty well. So let's just see what happens.
Yeah.
Let's just see what the next step holds in front of us. Absolutely. So, however, I will say, when I look back into the reasons why I failed, I think there were some points where I would have blamed things outside of my control, but a lot of it was because of my limiting beliefs. A lot of it was because I put myself out, quote unquote, put myself out there, but not really. Or I priced something, but it wasn't really the right price. Or I worked really, really, really hard because I wasn't trusting that it would come and I sabotaged myself. So what are some of those limiting beliefs that you've held that have given you those moments where things have worked on you and maybe not for you? And how have you overcome them? Or tell us a story maybe about how you overcame them to make another transition, I guess, in your life.
Sure. So I think my biggest limiting belief and the most recent one is I don't have capacity for that. I don't have capacity. I don't have space. I don't have capacity. I can't handle that. It's kind of like this ongoing desire to remain comfortable that masquerades in this, I don't have capacity. I don't have space. And I think that the way that I'm working with that right now is to just push my comfort zone. And I know that sometimes we need to be kind to ourselves and listen to the voice or the belief and give it space. And other times we need to be like, you need to stop chiming in. Like, thanks for your 2 cents, but I'm going to move forward now. So I am constantly reminding myself, what if you did have capacity? What if you do have capacity? What if there is enough space? What if you'll figure it out if it gets overwhelming? What if you'll figure it out if you don't like your schedule? What if you'll figure it out? You will figure it out, and you can always rearrange and make changes. Why not push the boundary I'm not going to say the boundary. Why not push the limit a little bit here?
I love that. That's such a healthy relationship with your limiting beliefs, or soon to be non-limiting beliefs, right? As we continue to grow through them, to grow past them. So you are a writer, storyteller, a copywriter. If you were to think, though, with all of the things that you've learned and grown through about the story that you want people to tell about you when you're gone, what would that story be?
This is such an interesting question that I have been thinking about a lot. And the story they're going to tell is that she worked hard. I know it. I already know it. They're going to say she worked hard. She was relentless. She never gave up. And is that the story I want them to tell? I think I want them to tell a different story. I think I want them to say, Mom always listened. Mom was always there to listen. And so, like a lot of entrepreneurial women, I have this thing going on where I'm one way. I can get very focused. I can be very driven. And home life requires a softer version of me. It requires that I shake that drive off a little bit, that I come down into dinner mode, and that I'm present with the conversation, and that I remember I don't have to sprint right now. I'm with my family. Whatever my 10-year-old is telling me about the Lego thing he did is important. And I want them to remember me for listening.
I think that's beautiful and so succinct. And I think that the best, most succinct, most elegant things to be remembered for are often the easiest things for people to tell the story of when you're not there. And from being remembered to being a good listener, someone who prioritizes their family is an amazing thing to be remembered for. And it's also a really good quality that I'm sure you employ with your clients as a copywriter, because you have to when you're writing sales copy, especially for, motherhood-inspired brands. So why, in addition to you being a good listener, why should someone decide to work with you? As a brand, as a copywriter, now knowing all of the juicy wonderfulness that you've told us?
Yeah, so there are 2 reasons really why someone would choose me, and why I actually do feel genuinely that I stand out. And I think that's because I had 8+ years experience in digital marketing before becoming a copywriter, including having built a successful coaching business to 6 figures annually, which my goal was obviously to keep going with that. But I transitioned into copywriting, and I had a substantial change of my business model. And so I have substantial experience selling everything from low ticket to middle tier to high ticket. I have substantial experience with evergreen, with live launches. I have a a level of direction and strategy that a lot of entry-level copywriters just don't have. And anybody can take a quick 6-week, 8-week copywriter course and say like, hey, I'm a copywriter for hire. That's not what I'm doing over here. I'm standing on kind of a small mountain of experience. And so I bring that to the table, and I love to showcase it because it's the truth. It's honest. The other reason why someone would choose me is likely because of my background as a holistic health practitioner before coming online. So I have a lot of connections in the holistic motherhood space, and just a lot of I'm familiar with the industry's landscape. I'm familiar with the trends in that arena. And so I can also bring that to the table.
Well, it sounds like you're bringing a lot to the table. I am a copywriter in my background now. I do strategy work, and I'm just kind of like, well, shoot, I'd hire her. And if you're listening, I mean, especially if you're in a motherhood-inspired brand, I think that you should hire her. But, who am I? Just a marketer with 15 years of experience who hires copywriters all the time. But, whatever. Don't just ignore me like I don't know nothing. No, please don't ignore me. Please go and hire Jillian. Thank you so much. Jillian, if they want to go hire you, how could they do that?
Well, I'm over at www.jillian-anderson.com, and you can go, read a little bit more there. And there's a button to, take next steps. And you can obviously, take a look around, and everybody comes to me needing different things. And so I'd be excited to hear what you need, what you're working on.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for joining us here on the Flourishing Entrepreneur podcast today, Jillian. It has been a pleasure. I'd love to hear your story. I love rooting around in your brain. Thank you for letting me do it. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much for having me on, Alea. Like, total honor. Totally have been looking forward to this so much. And I really appreciate the plug there. Thank you.
You're welcome. Talking with Jillian was such a joy, right? If you are a mom, know a mom, about to be a mom, about to be a partner of someone with a mom, that's going to be a mom, I think that this episode and this conversation hopefully gave you a little bit of a better and deeper understanding of transition and transformation and how that affects lots and lots of areas of our lives when it comes to how we see ourselves and how we relate to the world. One of the things that I particularly enjoyed about this conversation is that it kept building the layers on top of the layers, understanding how one transition and one key learning built onto the next key learning, built on the ability to understand yourself, understand others, understand purpose. And if you, no matter if it's motherhood or not, are going through some type of crisis, some type of change, and you haven't found the lesson yet, I encourage you to take time to pause, because the crisis and the change, the catalyst for that change is worthless unless you can see the power that it is giving you. And that power comes through knowledge. That power comes through realizing things are always working out for your highest good and understanding what that means in that situation. Even my postpartum depression was working out for my highest good, even though it definitely did not feel it at the time. So I encourage you, no matter what's going on in your life, to take a pause today and say, how is this helping me? What lessons am I gaining from this? How am I using this to shape my identity, to shape who I want to be and how I want to show up in the world and how I want other people to remember me? Just a thought. You can take it or leave it, but I encourage you to take it. All right. As always, this is the Flourishing Entrepreneur podcast, and my name is Alea Harris, and I am thrilled that you joined me and Jillian here today, sending you lots of love, light, and abundance. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Flourishing Entrepreneur podcast with Alea Harris. Vibing with what you hear? Leave a 5-star review to spread the love, and be sure to click subscribe. We wish you love, light, and abundance. See you next time.